So when my dad got sick and was sent to the hospital and we weren't allowed to see him and we'd put him in the induced coma, she didn't know all that information, but she knew enough information about how serious COVID was. She compartmentalized it. A lot of her dolls and Lego activities revolved around sick, uh, sick characters, ambulances, hospitals, quarantine, kind of playing out what was happening. Um, she still bursts into tears um, at times. I don't think she's fully comprehended the scope, but I think she knows a lot more than a 6-year-old should.
I know it had a big impact on other people around that knew me, that knew my sons, and so on. That suddenly, gee, your husband died, or in their case, their father died, and all of a sudden, I think a lot of sort of younger people that weren't really taking it seriously because they thought, oh, it's not going to happen to us. And then suddenly they know somebody because he knew a lot of people. We've lived here all our lives. And suddenly, I know my younger son said that he'd been talking to somebody and they said, all of a sudden it meant something to them. It was a more serious thing. So hopefully, but also they realized that, hey, I may be fine, but what about my parents? What about my mom or dad or my grandparents or whatever? It's not just all about them kind of thing. So
I have underlying illness in a sense of I had I have diabetes. I also have had a heart attack and an open heart surgery. So I'm on medication, and with that medication did come some symptoms of dry cough, aching muscles. So I really had to pay attention to my body and remember what it was feeling like when I had COVID, and to now, so I didn't panic and go get tested every time I had a little ache in muscles or cough. So
I have LPR now, which is not gastritis, it's like gastritis, so I have to be very careful what I eat. I eat a lot of Gaviscon. I'm on a medication for it now.
I remember when I went into isolation, I packed a hospital go bag just in case. And that's a really weird feeling. And it's really unnerving that like each day you're sitting there waking up and being like, okay, is my breathing normal?
This whole situation has, just in that I actually am a permanent resident of Canada. All of my family lives in the States and I'm not allowed to go see them. So that weighs heavily. We had plans to go home and visit this summer, and now I can't do that. I don't know when I'll be able to see my family. That is hard for me emotionally.
My dad, you know, he was hit the hardest by it. So he actually ended up in the ICU at St. Paul's Hospital in Saskatoon. Ended up being intubated for, I think, 9 days, ICU for 11. Then he was just in the hospital by himself. So he's alone. So, you know, none of us are able to go there and advocate for him and, you know, help him through a very difficult situation because when, you know, he's intubated, he's on such strong drugs and you know, he comes out of that and he's alone and, you know, probably very scared. So, you know, and as the family member, you know, it sucked that we were having to deal with, you know, the virus ourselves. Luckily, you know, my wife, my mom and I, we all fought it off just fine. But as my dad was in the hospital, it was very difficult because, you know, we weren't allowed to go see him or be there for him.
But I certainly have some anxiety now, I guess. A lot of anxiety because, of course, this was kind of in the start of it here in Saskatchewan. So, my questions to the health professionals who were amazing on the 811 line, it was like, okay, so after I'm done this, am I immune? Well, we don't know yet. Can I get it again yet? Well, we don't know yet. So there's some anxiety from that, and still even so now, I find that wearing a face mask when I do have to go to the grocery store or something gives me a little bit of peace of mind.
I'm still probably only 95% of my energy level from where I was to begin with. And some days that shows more than other days. The other thing that seems to be lasting and again, this comes and goes, is ironically, a shortness of breath after I'm over it. While I was sick, I didn't really have it, but after the fact, every once in a while, it almost seems to be triggered with high humidity.
From what I've seen, there's no consensus on whether having had it makes you immune. All that I know is that after I contracted, a couple months later, went and donated plasma to try for plasma in a study about antibodies, and I got the results back, and mine were low. My antibodies were low about 3 months after I'd contracted COVID. And again, like the only there's no really advantage to living like I have immunity, right? Because I could live like normal, and then the worst thing that happens is that I get it again, and I don't want to have that. Whereas if I just, I'm careful and, sanitize stuff that comes into the house, wash my hands a lot, social distance, wear a mask, I stay safe, right? There's no downside.